Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 859. It is the pre-show, that magical, marvelous, wonderful time of this program where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say occasionally outrageous things. Yeah, WeatherBrains 859. This is for the 5th of July. It's a Tuesday night special for those that are watching live. And also, if you're watching live, you have figured out, you've discovered our new YouTube channel. And, here's the deal. So, years and years ago, we were just an audio show. This was audio only for, I don't know, what, 5, 6, 7 years. And then my folks here wanted to port it over to the video so they could take it on our digital weather channel on Monday nights. So fine. And I just threw it up originally on the James Spann YouTube page because it was there, not even thinking about it. But the truth is, this show needs its own identity, its own YouTube page. And I've been meaning to do this for 10 years. So anyway, we have moved over to the new YouTube WeatherBrains channel. And, last week, we were getting ready to do this and we couldn't go live because with the new YouTube channel, you have to wait 24 hours for some reason. But anyway, all of that is fixed. So welcome. So let's get this thing rocking and rolling here. Let's get the embed code laid down so we can be on the television side. And it's going to be a fun show tonight. I think we're debriefing the AMS meeting up in Wisconsin here a couple of weeks ago, and those are really good. And I always hate to miss the June meeting, but that is so hard for me. It's just a tough time of the year. So let's get everybody invited. And I'm actually early. I thought I'd try it early tonight to be sure things are working. So, but I do think it is working, which is a good thing. All right, so let's get everybody going here. We'll get Troy and Rick and Jen and Neil and Kim. And I always get the Aubrey Urbanowitz, thing that pops up, and it saddens me because we certainly miss Aubrey on the show here. All right, so I think we're good to go. Hope you've had a good 4th of July. A lot of folks had a 3-day weekend. Of course, in the weather business, the weather never stops. So we just work right on through it, which is great. We are living the dream in this business. And I actually did, have that week off in late June, my first time off in a year. So that was a good mental health break. But back at it. And again, we will have another. I've got another week off in August. So we'll be doing another week with 2 shows in 1 week. And then after that, my next one is scheduled for the week after Christmas, which is always an adventure because sometimes those don't work. Didn't work last year. We had a tornado event and then a snow event, which kind of kept me from taking time off after Christmas. But that's okay. Again, we are living the dream here. But we are down here in the deep south in our classic summer rut, highs in the 90s, lows in the 70s, and random air mass storms, one of the great mysteries of weather forecasting. And it's the most frustrating time of the year to be in my business because people want to know at 7:00 in the morning if it's going to rain on their picnic at 4 in the afternoon, or their son's baseball game, or their fireworks display at 8:30. And at 7:00 in the morning, we don't know. We have no clue. We might have a general idea where the better chance of initiation might be with convection. But in terms of specific location at a specific time, no app, no meteorologist, nobody knows. And that's so you wind up saying every day, hot, humid, a few pop-up storms in random spots this afternoon, roughly from 2 until 10. Highs in the 90s. And that really doesn't help anybody because they need to know if it's going to rain at their specific point at 4:30 in the afternoon. So I was hoping the next generation might make some progress in that, but I honestly don't know. All right. So it's 55 after, and I'm the only guy here. This is never a good thing. And I just sent the invitations out. So wouldn't that be funny if it's just me on this show? That would be a total debacle. 2 hours of me. And that would be a disastrous show title. But again, looking at everything, I do think we are normal here. We are on the right channel and the right. Maybe everybody else is gone, and I don't know. No, I know that we've got some great guests here. I know they'll be here. I started early, which I have not done in weeks, but I just wanted to be sure the new YouTube channel is up and running, and it seems to be doing fine. And again, we made a lot of shifts in video techniques and YouTube channels. And I did a lot of that on my week off. I've been doing things I've been meaning to do for 5 years and just have not had the time to do that. Time is the most precious commodity. I mean, it is just absolutely precious. And it gets away from me very easily. And here's Jen and here's Kim. So I feel better now. I did not want a James Spann show for 2 hours. That would be bad. Very bad. Is Bill not here, Kim? Is he out?
Oh, I don't know. I hadn't seen anything from him. Had you?
I saw he sent me a picture from the beach. Even when he travels, he's typically on the show. So maybe he'll join us here shortly. He might be having connectivity issues. Jen, you okay? How you doing?
I'm great. How are you all?
Doing well.
Doing okay. Have you been watching the DeRay show? Are you going to be pulled from any of that?
I don't think so. I have one station in Iowa with that, but we don't go live up in that area, but I've been watching it. It's really starting to get impressive.
I was going to say, it's not even has it technically become a DeRay show yet, or is it still just the MCS with embedded MCV goodness?
I think so. But they were watching it and thinking that it could evolve that way if it keeps going through the night. So
that would be a great show title, MCS with embedded MCVs. or a rock and roll band name or something.
Embedded MCVs.
Yes.
It would be hot.
Yeah, the embedded MCVs. Here comes Rick. Where's Dr. Neil? Well, I opened this thing up early just to be sure the new YouTube channel. Because remember last week, I went to go live and told everybody, hey, we got a new YouTube channel, and everybody was waiting for it. And then I got this message from YouTube. You must wait 24 hours before you can go live on your new channel. It's our policy here to prevent bots from getting out of hand. So that happened last week, but no, we're good to go. And Bill is the only guy missing. Let me send him one more invite.
And Troy. Is Troy not coming tonight?
Yeah, Troy should be here too. I sent everybody an invite, but I will spam them with another one.
Rick, I'm really glad that you made it, because even though I'm sort of leading the questioning on this, you were also at the conference and you were the co-chair for one of the high-profile sessions. So you're going to need to chime in. I have a question on that session, and you're going to need to chime in here too. You're not going to get away from it.
Wouldn't miss it. Yeah. Wouldn't miss it. Glad to be here.
I said to Robbie, FYI, I won't be able to answer this question here today.
All right, so we
can make Rick answer it.
We have to wait until we got 50 seconds. We can start. We can't start before the TV. So we can sit back and relax. Anybody need to say anything outrageous before the show starts?
Verify you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you.
Robbie, is that your real hair?
It is, yeah.
Oh man. Oh wow. Oh boy. For those of us that are follically challenged, that's a dream. That is an absolute dream. Wow.
You've generated quite a following with your hair, or because of your hair, I think, Robbie.
I mean, this is a well-coiffed man. That's awesome. All right, so let's get the thing. Welcome to our television viewers. It is Tuesday night. I know that you typically watch us on Monday night, but we had a holiday yesterday, so we took the day off. So we are on Tuesday. It's a Tuesday night special. Track 1 is up. Track 2 is up. And here we go in 5, 4, 3. Uh-oh, here comes Troy. Let me get him in here. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Hey, WeatherBrains, episode number 859. It's a Tuesday night special. This is for the 5th of July, 2022, just coming off a 3-day holiday weekend for a lot of folks. Thank you for joining us. And again, for those that watch live, just one logistical note, we did change channels last week. We now have a new YouTube channel, something I meant to do about 8 years ago, but I finally got around to doing it. So thanks for discovering us. But we know that most of you listen. Thank you for being here. And this is going to be a great show tonight. And I see just hopping online is Troy Kimmel in Austin, Texas. Troy, are you okay?
I'm here. That's what, and apparently alive today. So everything's good. So
everything is good.
Weather hadn't changed in the last 4 years, but besides that, basically another day of 100-degree temperatures in Austin, 99 out at Bergstrom, 101 out at Camp Mabry, so an average of 100. And I see nothing but 100 to 105 for the next 7 days, really, around here. No mention of rain. Even the CPCs, even week 3 and 4, there's really no hope. I mean, the 8 to 14's got something out there, but be damned if I'm going to grab that hook at this point. I'm not about to bite on that one yet, given the ongoing drought conditions and stuff like that.
So I was transferred to Dallas in August of 1984.
Yeah.
And I think the high exceeded 100 for like 4 weeks in a row. I'm thinking, what have I done here? I had moved to Hades.
Well, the upper level ridge is really forecast to strengthen over the southern plains over the next couple of days. And as Robbie would tell us, I guess, there's no question in my mind that, and I'm not saying I'm wishing for this, but I think there's just not much hope other than the tropics at this point, or God help us all, mid-level trough in the fall. I don't know that we can wait that long. We've got to get something from the tropics to start things up. Something's got to change this pattern. And I don't see much hope for that, for at least, based on the climate, and climatology is not my expertise, but the CPC's guidelines, I would say that's a while away.
Yeah. It doesn't look good for you guys. And for us, it's great. I mean, it's hot. It's always hot here, but it's just routine heat where you guys are in the blast furnace over there.
But it's a dry heat, James. It's a dry
heat. It's a dry heat. Yeah.
There you go.
So Neil, did I see some tornado warnings around Washington, D.C. Earlier this evening, or was that my imagination?
I haven't been paying attention.
There's your show title. That's your show title.
That's it. Got the show title already in the can here.
And coming from Neil too. That's great. I'm so proud.
I've been looking at the 5 to 10 day skill scores, but the 0 to 1 hour is I don't know. It's been kind of dark outside and kind of drizzly, but to be honest, I couldn't tell you what's going on.
I'll swap with
you. Neil was in a polygon and he worked right through it. This man is a machine. It looked like the polygon initially, the one I saw was a little east of DC earlier this evening, and all the TV stations were wall to wall and everything. But looks like that stuff's kind of moving off the coast of Delaware now. So, but I guess it broke the heat, Neil. Probably not that hot, is it?
No, it's. I got up this morning and went outside. It was a good bit cooler than it was yesterday. But I mean, yesterday wasn't bad. We had a break in the showers, which was nice because of the fireworks.
Yeah. So, Jen, how's your heat level up in Ohio?
It was not too bad today because we got dumped on this morning. So it took a little while for us to get our temperatures back up. But we had some really, really needed rain here. We had not had measurable rain for, a good dose of rain for a couple of weeks. And so it was starting to get pretty crispy here, but we had large storms come in this morning, and then got up into about mid to upper 80s today. It was pretty hot this weekend. We stayed dry too. And so now we're in a different pattern up here in Ohio, where we're going to see these storms rolling in. I'm watching what's happening up in Fort Wayne right now to kind of see how that goes through the night, and then back off, northwest of there. So we'll watch all that coming through, but not too shabby. It was a good weekend. I hope everybody else enjoyed their 4th.
Yeah, it was good. You're kind of got the ridge runners up there on top of the heat bubble. Let's go to our resident WCM in Norman. Rick, how's your heat levels in Oklahoma.
It's just disgusting. It's horrible. It's a little bit better than Troy, but when you get over 98, 99, who cares? But I think Oklahoma City, Will Rogers hit 100 for the first time today, and I believe that was the first time since August of 2020 that we've had officially 100. So, yay.
Yeah. Well, welcome to July. But I'm excited about this show. I love these debriefing sessions where we're going to talk about an AMS conference. So, Kim, I'm going to let you take it and you bring in our guest and let's go.
Sounds good. Well, I am really thrilled tonight. We have two guests with us. They're the co-chairs of the joint conference for weather warnings and communication, and also the broadcast conference, which this year were held together. And we'll have them talk a little bit about that togetherness and why that happens, what's so special about it in just a minute. But welcome to the show, Robbie Berg from the National Hurricane Center, and Jen Spinney, who is an anthropologist, and she comes to us from York University up in Canada. And Jen, I have to ask, just to make us all jealous, are things a little bit better up there than what we're experiencing here? It's probably a nice day there.
Don't say it, Jen.
You're referring to the heat, right? Or
yes.
Anything else? Or
heat. Well, it's really an open question.
No, I had to change my weather app to Fahrenheit because, we work in the metric in Celsius and all of this. So it's actually, it feels very warm here for me, but it is much cooler by comparison. I think we're currently at 86 degrees Fahrenheit here in London. So still quite toasty. I returned home from a run not too long ago, and it was difficult to make it through those kilometers, but sounds like things are much more toasty down where you all are. So yeah. And so anyway, it's nice. It's great, Kim, up here. Loving life. Life is good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's at least nice to know that you guys at least feel like you're boiling probably as much as we do. Oh, 86. Oh gosh. Wow, it's so hot here. But it's, what, it is all relative. So I'm just glad that you can join us today. And Robbie's just sitting there down in Florida rolling his eyes at all of us.
I just want to say for the record, it's 85 at my house right now.
In your house?
In your house?
Outside. It's 85.
Oh, well, geez. That's incredible. Okay, well, we're all so jealous of you.
You win. I think you win, Robbie. Maybe.
Break out the jackets.
But the dew point is 75.
That's true.
Yes. Well, welcome both of you to the show, and just really grateful that you can both be here to give us your varying perspectives too, because you both brought different things, I think, to co-chairing for this conference between your operational perspectives and your social science perspectives. So I think I'd like to start by asking both of you, just to talk a little bit about what was the setting for the conference this year, because just going into it, there'd been a lot of conversation about, do we have this conference? Do we have it in person? It kind of been something that had been postponed in past years. So maybe we can start, Robbie, with you for any details you want to offer on, what made it happen this year and how did it happen?
Yeah, so first I'll say that this all started, the planning of it, before a pandemic. I know, I think it was the last conference in San Diego. Nate was looking to shed the conference after doing it for so many times in a row, and I was there and volunteered, I guess. And so, not soon after that, Jen and I were actually at a common workshop down in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I kind of recruited Jen and said, "Hey, we have this great conference. I'd love to have you as a co-chair," because I didn't want to do it all by myself, but I knew Jen had so much to bring and offer to this particular topic. So, we went through the planning process, and then we were supposed to have the conference last year in 2021, and we were all set to do it. And then just because of what was going on in the world with the pandemic, AMS decided to put out a survey and check with people and see, would they like to postpone? Would they like to have it in person? Do all virtual? And overwhelmingly, I think the answer was no, we don't want to have it at all if we can't have it in person. So let's postpone. And so we did end up having to, move it to this year, which I think worked out. And I think Jen can, maybe she can agree or disagree, but I think that for this particular conference, with the broadcasters, there was just no way it was going to be totally virtual. That community wants to be in person. I mean, gosh, we're talking about social science. We want to be in person. We want to be able to talk to each other face to face. So I just didn't think there was any way that this was going to be a fully virtual conference. And so I am glad that we postponed it by a year.
Yeah, I think if I could add to that, the conference was overwhelmingly a success, very good sessions, lots of fantastic speakers, but we could have had the worst conference and still would have received overwhelmingly positive reviews simply because it was in person. I think people were craving just that interaction, that connection with others. And so, yeah, while we did postpone it by a year, I think that everyone was so happy that we could finally be together and sort of learn from one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's go from that just to talk a little bit about why these conferences are held together, the broadcast with weather warnings. I mean, you mentioned earlier that Nate has been sort of steering this ship since it started, and that hasn't been going for that long. It's been the Weather Warnings and Communication Conference has only been in existence since I think 2011 was its first year, maybe. But you guys can maybe comment on what makes this blend so special. How did this come? How did this come to be, or what's it like to put those groups together? Maybe Jen, you can start talking about that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kim. So it might be worth noting that Robbie and I were co-chairing the one side, right? The weather warnings and communication, and Shel Winkley and Brandon Rector were co-chairing the broadcast side. And I don't know the exact year that the weather warnings and communication, the inaugural kind of conference, but I know that this was the 6th event. It happens every 2 years typically. And when we do hold it, we tend to try and hold it in conjunction with the broadcast side. And I think the reason for that is mostly to sort of be in the same space as our key partners in the room. We have the operational folks and the academics who are working hard to sort of understand the public piece, who are working hard to create those important alerts and notifications for people. And then we have the people who are communicating those important messages. And so it's an opportunity for everyone to be in the same room, sort of learn from each other about what their respective roles are, what the challenges are that each group faces, the constraints that they're up against, what works well, what their individual or respective needs are. I think it's a real good opportunity for everyone to sort of share and learn from one another.
I'm curious, Robbie, with your operational, you're sort of centered in operations, and Jen, you're you come from the research world, so I'm sure that sitting in that room, you probably feel a lot of that. It's kind of nice to hear from practitioners in a space where they can share. Here are the things that we think are problems. Hey, researchers, maybe you can focus on this, and also, hey, broadcasters, you really want to know how to reach your audience. Here's some things that we're learning. Robbie, over the years, I feel like you've come to this a couple of times, and Jen perhaps has too. But I'm interested in, from your operational perspective, do you think that this pushes that narrative along and helps these groups to interact? What have you noticed over time as this has evolved?
Yeah, definitely. Look, broadcasters are the ultimate weather communicators. We all rely on the broadcasters to help us get the word out, get the message out. We can't do it alone. We have to do it with them. And so having this conference with both sides, the practitioner side, operations and broadcasters, and the research side, having us in the same place, as Jen said, to talk about current issues, for the researchers to see, what are the problems that broadcasters are having on TV or other media, right now, and for the broadcasters to see, what's the current state of research, what are the new ways that we can convey information to get out to different communities on certain weather events. So, I've seen, just working at the Hurricane Center, we just can't do our job without broadcasters in the media. And so the more that we can do to be in that same space to get these kind of topics bubbling up to the top so that we're all talking about it is excellent. So I really love that these two conferences go hand in hand every 2 years.
I also like that this was my first time attending the Weather Warnings and Communication Conference. And it was nice. how intimate it seemed. It was much smaller. And I think that really lends well to a positive experience. You're able to participate in many more of the sessions. You're able to meet many more people one-on-one and chat with people. You have students who are able to sort of have that rich experience in a space that's not overwhelming, not as intimidating as that annual meeting. So I think for those reasons, the overall conference itself is very positive.
Hey, Jen and Robbie, thanks so much for being here. Good to see you guys again. Just to give some perspective, I mean, we talk about lots of different conferences and meetings. We talk about the AMS annual meeting, which comes usually in January. And this one, can you kind of, for some perspective, can you kind of compare the attendance between those two, and how many different things are going on at one time?
Oh my gosh!
This conference versus AMS annual meeting, I know there's a huge difference.
Yeah, I think there were like almost 200 people registered for this conference, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
And remarkably, only about, I think, 40 some odd people were virtual.
That's right, yeah.
So overwhelmingly, it was people in person. So obviously, as Jen said, this conference is a lot smaller than, say, you go to the annual meeting. Even I go to the tropical hurricanes and tropical conference, and that one's a lot larger than this. That one, for example, you'll have 4 concurrent sessions, and there's always so many competing things you want to see. That you just can't make it all. The great thing is that I think about half of the conference time was spent in joint sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So that allowed people to really see very common topics and talks that were interesting to everybody. Then with the other sessions that were split, people could go back and forth, and it wasn't that far of a walk, and it was very easy to just pop in and out to the other sessions. So like Jen said, it's a very manageable amount of people, a very manageable amount of sessions that I think really helps people get the most out of the conference.
And we purposely did that. We worked together, Robbie and I, with Brandon and Shell, to construct a conference where there was a lot of joint sessions, so that we not force, but we're gently pushing people to sort of share in each other's space and to learn about what the other person is doing on a day-to-day basis. But by comparison, the annual meeting is like light years difference, I think, in terms of the number of registrants, the number of concurrent symposia, conferences, whatever we want to call them, that are happening, the sheer distance that one has to walk to get from one session to another. I mean, you wear your flats at one of those annual meetings because your feet are fried by the end of the first day. So yeah, I think generally for the annual meeting, you gravitate to your conference, the one that interests you the most. I think Policy Society, I don't recall the name of the one that I typically participate in. But still, even within that small symposia, there are a lot of concurrent sessions. It's impossible to see everything. Unlike this one, like Robbie said, much more manageable. It made planning much easier, actually. I know there were a few moments where I said to Robbie, isn't there something else we need to be doing right now? And he said, no, I think we're good. So
that was one of the things I love about it, is how small it was and intimate. And I mean, you may have, I don't know, I counted one time over 30 concurrent sessions at the annual meeting. And it was just cool being able to step out of the room where the weather warning and communications was going on. You could literally just look across the hall and see where the broadcasters were. And you could easily run back and forth between them. But I thought that was a good design to have so many joint sessions to, bring everybody together. And I think everybody appreciated that.
Yeah, I know I did. I'll just add really quickly, Jen, was this sort of the most joint sessions one of these had? Because I felt like it was, compared to even a normal year for this thing, it's very common for it, in my memory at least, for there to be the 2 parallel rooms going. But this year there was so much that was joint, and it was really nice.
Well, Robbie, do you wanna jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I think that the amount of submissions we got for abstracts was down. So even though there were so many people craving to come to a conference, I do think it was still a little bit more limited from past years. So it almost gave us the luxury of having so many joint sessions. I mean, otherwise, it would have been more separate. And then, in my opinion, it almost detracts or takes away from what's the purpose of having them joint. So it's finding that balance by not having too many abstracts submitted on both sides, but just enough to have these joint sessions where everybody gets a little bit out of each side.
I almost feel like it's a neat best practice idea going forward. Like maybe that's the way we could do it in the future. And by we, I mean you guys. Congratulations, your mantle, your child. But I think it could be like a neat thing to consider. Maybe we should just try to cap the number of total talks, because maybe the integration is the point. I got to spend more time than I typically do listening to the broadcasters, I think. And it was really, really wonderful. There were so many who were very thoughtful, and they were doing things too, like they were trying to offer best practices to each other. And I my colleagues and I looked at that and we said, oh my goodness, we could actually really speak to like they have this desire for some of these best practices. This touches on our fields. If that's something they really want, maybe that's the kind of talk we could give in the future. What are some research-informed best practices about things that we take for granted, but it's so easy to get in your discipline and just feel like, oh, well, everyone knows this. But the thing is, no, not everyone knows it. So I really got a lot of value out of that. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jen.
No, I agree. I think there were some standout presentations, standout sessions that I was pleased to be able to listen in on. And had we not had those joint sessions, it would not have been possible. Like I just would have only stuck to my side. Yeah, but I think Robbie's right. As much as we purposely sort of constructed that schedule, the number of submissions really lent well to us creating more joint sessions.
Well, speaking of things you're experimenting with all of this, do you think that hybrid will be the way to go in the future? How did that format work?
I'll tell you, I am not a fan of the hybrid, actually. I know it might be the way of the future, but it presented some extreme challenges for us. I don't think all of those kinks have been flushed out. And I think in the end, it led to delays in our scheduling. We couldn't always hear the people who were joining us virtually. We had to sort of figure things out on the fly, and I'm just not an on the fly kind of person. I really like to be organized, and I don't know actually for the ability it has to enhance access. It's incredible that way. It allows many more people to join in and listen, and that's fantastic. But it leaves out some of those key parts of a conference, those opportunities to interact and to connect with others. I think that hybrid and being able to listen into sessions and presentations is not the hybrid that I would want to see in the future. I would want to see a lot more engagement, lots more opportunity for people who are joining us virtually to engage during coffee sessions. And so I don't know how exactly to make that happen, but that's kind of the future I would want if we were to continue with hybrid.
And Robbie and everybody, I'm going to tell you, this is the lost 2 years in academia. I will tell you, the last couple of years, I really truly believe that. We see it at the University of Texas. Some people like to talk about it. And like Jen says, sure, it increases access, and that's great. But boy, you've got to be dedicated to that. You really do. It's too easy to sit here and decide. Funny, I bring this up. Oh, there's food in the refrigerator that way. And other things that can grab your attention. And we've seen it pull people out of the classroom. And I'm telling you, we've got to get back into person and live somehow with this thing that we're stuck with called coronavirus, and kind of move on from there. But I'm glad to know I really wanted to attend this meeting, and I just could not get loose. I had several things that were going on at the time, one of which I'll talk about in later in the next hour. But no, I agree with your point, Jen. It's something that some people don't want to talk about, but I'm going to tell you, it's the virtual side of it. We've lost that person. And I think that's important. We have to have one-on-one. And for students, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing sorry, Jen. One thing I was going to add too is, it's not fair to the speakers that they're there in person and then have a technical glitch that they have to then wait
Exactly
for IT to fix. And
Yes.
the IT people there in Milwaukee were great, but I just feel bad for the presenters that have to go through that after they've gotten prepared and ready to go, and then they're told to wait 5 minutes.
We did have one full-time IT person going back and forth between the two conferences, and perhaps that created a capacity issue, because perhaps with a hybrid conference, we should know at this point that we might need more than just one person. In addition to sometimes presentations being inaudible, the people who were joining us virtually couldn't see the actual person. You could only see the slide deck when they were presenting, which I think is unfortunate. And it's just that we didn't set up the meetings to allow for the video to come through in that Zoom space. It just changes the experience, and I'm not sure how people, I don't know, did we post a survey? Were we supposed to administer a survey after this, Robbie, and we didn't? Oh no. But I don't know. Yeah, okay, phew. I don't know if we've received any kind of feedback, positive or negative, from virtual attendees regarding those issues.
I think they did put out a survey, so it's out there for people.
Okay, good.
I responded to one. I hope it came from you guys. So.
Well, it came from Marissa, I guess, the AMS person or her team, I'm assuming.
It's never easy virtual. I mean, we're here, and we're probably going to be in some form of hybrid. I think the AMS annual meeting's already planning to be hybrid again in January. I'm not 100%. I think so. But you guys did an amazing job in talking about the tech support there. I know Kim and I were in one session where Joseph was doing his presentation, and something happened, and the tech guy worked very hard. He was very patient and very good. He played some jazz music for us while he was fixing things, and it was a very good experience. But yeah, it's just not great. It's not the same. And we had the WCM conference last week in Madison, Wisconsin, just west of Milwaukee, and I think we had about 180 people there on site, and then we had 70 or 80 virtual. But we were getting the questions from those that were virtual, but otherwise we couldn't see them. They couldn't really see us, and I'm not complaining. It's better than nothing. But, and Robbie, I think I mentioned to you, maybe Jen too, at one point, it's impossible to do this. But another thing that with the hybrid, is this going back and forth between, you have an in-person speaker and then you have to switch to the virtual. If there was a way to stack all the virtual together, that would be cool. But that means redoing the agenda the day up in some cases. So Rick, that's not practical. But I think you guys, and I think everybody's doing the best they can with what we got, and that's all we can do.
Rick, that's an excellent point, and I think Robbie even suggested that, like, in retrospect, that would have been the smarter move, the smarter way to structure it. But I think hindsight's 2020, not having ever chaired something that's hybrid. Like you said, everyone's doing the best they can. And next time, if I'm in this position again to chair a hybrid conference, I would certainly do that, because that makes more sense. Toggling back and forth created some challenges. Certainly.
But congratulations to y'all, Robbie and Janet and the other folks on the broadcast side, for 200 registered people and 45 virtual. I like that trend. I like that where we are now in 2022.
It was fantastic. It was a really great time. I think we did a lot to promote interaction beyond just the sessions and our joint sessions. We tried to create integration, if you will, in this special building resilience panel. We had that outing that we planned for everyone to be as together as possible. I convened morning runs before the day began. I mean, I think we tried our best to sort of give everyone a well-rounded experience.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. You highlighted a couple of the kinds of sessions that you had. Tell us more about the resilience panel and some of the other sessions that you did hold. Were you trying to, like, was there a main conference theme that was holding everything together? Or did you just sort of solicit and follow whatever came in and you just managed that flow?
No, Robbie, you answer about the theme.
Yeah, I guess I can start off. So, it's funny. Again, this is my first time chairing too, so I didn't really know exactly how this was all going to go. I think there were a few themes that I know I wanted to bring to the forefront for the conference. Things particularly like how do we communicate multi-hazard events, whether it be tornadoes and flash flooding ongoing in one severe weather event, or with a hurricane, it's the storm surge, the wind, the tornadoes, the heavy rainfall and flooding. How do you communicate multi-hazard events? And on top of that, a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping to get a lot more papers and submissions on that sort of topic. Didn't get quite as many as I had hoped. And I found that we were trying to assemble the sessions. It was much less about specifically what people submitted it as us just trying to put common topics together into sessions that made sense. So I don't know if that began because of the small number of submissions, if that's just the way that panned out relative to, say, the annual meeting where you probably have so many submissions, you can actually create sessions around what people are submitting. But I think the sessions that we had come out of it really worked well. We had very similar topics. I'll let Jen talk about the resilience panel because she really pioneered that one. And I think that's best practice too, because just going to an AMS conference and just listening to talk after talk after talk is a lot. But having this more interactive panel discussion I thought was great. So I'll let Jen take
so I didn't realize that we scheduled my very special building resilience panel at the same time. Was it Climate Central hosted their free drink event or something? So really we lost a lot of people to that. However, it was an exceptional. Sorry, what?
We have to have drinks next time.
I think that would be a solid move on our part. Free drinks are hard to compete with, indeed. But no, it was an undertaking that we made because of a special working group I'm a part of. It's led by James Ledoux, and there are many people on this working group. It's all centered on building community resilience. And so we meet now and again. And when I said, I'm chairing this conference, and the people in the group, Jim and everyone, Tanya, Francine, and many others suggested, well, let's do something at the Weather Warnings and Communication Conference. So we conceived of this idea to bring a panel of diverse stakeholders together. To talk about severe wind, how do we inch the needle forward to enhance or promote resilience? So we had broadcast meteorologist Tom Walks, local to Milwaukee, was agreed to be on our panel. Who else was there? There was Christine Alfano, and she's an engineer / meteorologist. And she deals a lot with structural engineering and how to properly build secure homes and performance standards for homes, especially to withstand severe winds. We had Michelle, I should remember Michelle's last name. She's a local emergency manager for Waukesha County, and she joined us. And we were also supposed to have,
somebody from We Energies, which is the local power company.
She wasn't able to come because Milwaukee had sustained a massive wind event in the days leading up to our conference. So it ended up where Tom, Christine, and her name, it's Michelle is the We Energies that wasn't in attendance. So I feel terrible at this point that I don't remember her name. But Waukesha County Emergency Manager, the three experts. Gail, thank you. Yes, Gail, Emergency Manager, Waukesha County. The three experts led the discussion. We centered it around the derecho, and then another extreme wind event that happened a year later in August 2021. And I think it was most powerful for the broadcast community because Christine, the engineer, was able to impart all of these ideas for how broadcasters could talk about performance of structures, the small efforts people in the community could make to kind of create more tornado safety in their homes. And so we see the broadcasters as a major link. As Robbie said, they are the most prominent communicator for weather. And so we were thinking, Christine, if you can talk to Tom and all of the other broadcasters in the room, then you can share some of these ideas and we can begin this conversation. So thankfully, that panel was really just a starting point. And what we're going to do now is we'll spin up with Jim and everyone in the working group. And Christine's part of the working group too, the engineer. And we're going to initiate conversations with Tom and many other broadcasters and see if we can leverage our relationships to have the broadcasters talk about these ideas on air and sort of get the message out in a way to have people on the ground, these residents, sort of make these changes at the household level. I should remember Gail's name. That's terrible. Gail, if you ever listen to this, I'm so sorry.
You were the sweetest. Names are so hard. That is the number one reason I would never make it in politics. I'm great at faces, and I'd be like, I know everything about your life, an eerie amount, probably. but I have no idea who you are, like what your name is. I have no idea. So it's kind of interesting actually that you overlapped with a Climate Central event. I know Neil is waiting in the wings here with another question, but I'm kind of curious if your idea was at all motivated by Climate Central and their model. One of the things that they've tried to do that has been so successful is leveraging broadcast meteorologists and feeding them local climate impact stories so that their audiences can build climate literacy. And they're actually having amazing success with it. And so it's kind of interesting that it's unfortunate that you were up against them in their drinking event. But your panel, I mean, I love that idea. Broadcasters are so trusted. We have several people here who work in the broadcast sector. There are trusted voices. And I think it's just wonderful that you thought to leverage them that way. But I was curious if you had even known that was a coincidence that was going on.
That is a happy coincidence. But really what it says to me, Kim, is that we need to be talking to people at Climate Central because there's no sense in us reinventing the wheel. They've got a really well-oiled wheel that functions well, and they have had success, it sounds like, from what you've shared. And so really, we in our working group should be learning from the people in Climate Central and using their methods, their processes to sort of inch us even more forward in this work, in this initiative.
I can see you guys partnering it really easily. You could probably leverage all the infrastructure they've built and just get some infrastructural resilience pieces that will mesh so well with the science. So love that. That is really, really wonderful. Sorry that was a bummer for your panel, but maybe some good, like maybe ultimate good can come of this because that just happened to be a coincidence. And with that, I'll pass the baton over to Neil for his question.
You might have answered my question. I was going to ask about outreach and promotion, but clearly, if you just schedule it as a drinking event, I think you'll fill it up pretty quick. So what, this is one thing that I've been looking at with the AMS summer community meeting, and the week before we've got the EPIC and UFS workshop. Did you all have sort of a comms outreach plan? I know, Robbie, you mentioned you were thinking you might get more abstract or talk submissions for one area. Did you have like a strategy, or did you just blast on all different forms of social media, or was it more of a planned execution for the outreach and promotion?
Yeah, I mean, most of it was centered around social media. I mean, AMS sent multiple emails to the community. We sent it out on social media. I will say that our board, the Societal Impacts Board's presence on Twitter probably isn't that strong. So I don't know how many followers we have and whether that many people actually saw those. Broadcasters, I know a lot of people follow their accounts. So I know it was advertised several times on theirs. But you know, it's a good question, I think, as far as how do we advertise all of AMS conferences and get attract people to come to them? I mean, for example, one thing I wish with this conference is that we had more students. You know, Jen and I had this great plan that we were going to have this, judge all these student presentations.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It ended up being we judged 4, I think, which was a little disappointing. Don't only have that many, but I would love to see more students. So I think it's, the other conferences, the tropical, I'm sure there's others, get lots of students. But how do we attract students to this conference? More on the broadcast side, more on the weather warning side.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's what we need a lot of help with.
Yeah, I mean, AMS doesn't have a very large budget for us as chairs to sort of work with. But Robbie and I had dedicated money towards student travel and then student awards, and no one applied for the student travel. Oh. And we had 4 presentations. And unfortunately, as you were mentioning, Rick, one of the students during his presentation was interrupted because of technical difficulties. And so, not to say that, I think he kind of recovered beautifully. Like, I don't think I would have been able to recover as well. But it did adjust how we evaluated the presentations. We had to remove one of our criteria because he didn't get a chance to actually perform that criteria. So to be fair, you remove it across the board. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question. Oh, the FEMA guy, you felt bad for the FEMA guy. Okay. The FEMA guy was a little late, I must say. We didn't know if he was actually going to join us that day. So he didn't upload his presentation in advance. I mean, these things create challenges for organizers.
So I've been thinking about this student outreach thing because it's hugely important. And one of the things I noticed, we had scheduled an event. I don't exactly know what it is, but it was clearly at the same week of final exams because none of the students actually registered for it. And that was their reason. And like a knucklehead, I just wasn't paying attention to what the academic schedule was. But I'm curious. Well, I guess maybe it's a 2-part question. First, what are folks' thoughts on our ability to reach out to students that are not necessarily looped into this field? Or they're distantly looped into this field, but maybe they're not members of AMS or things like that. And maybe a second part to that question is UCAR community programs. It's got like 120 different university members there. There's a tremendous amount of outreach capability there, which I think is potentially some untapped outreach potential. But are any people in your community talking about how to reach people who aren't necessarily in our field, but they're in related fields, but they're not looped into what's going on?
So Robbie, do you want to start?
Yeah, my response isn't specifically on students yet, but I will just say that with, let's say, the panel that we set up, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but we had some struggles with AMS and paying for these people, the panelists, to participate on the panel. They're not AMS members, they're not meteorologists, and yet they were expected to still pay full amount to attend. And that is ludicrous, because if we want to pull these people into our community, get them to participate, bring their knowledge from other fields, we shouldn't be putting such high burdens on them to participate. Now, I know that's not students, but I think that does kind of speak to some of the limitations and restrictions that we're having to deal with when it comes to our outreach. I don't know, Jen, if you have anything specifically about students that you have to add.
It really does make it difficult to loop people in, as you say, and sort of enhance or create stronger integration across the fields. When it comes to students, I I don't know a specific way for looping students in. We have programs at York where we have, every 2 weeks webinar series where we could certainly promote the fields. It's a disaster and emergency management program. So people are already have this strong appetite for weather hazards and so on. But it could be where we build from the Societal Impacts Board. We do have this board specifically to thank for any kind of promotion and outreach that happened during the conference. We secured the assistance of 1 or 2 students who agreed to hashtag everything that was going on as much as they could. And so really, if it weren't for these 2 students that were helping us, I'm not sure if people would have even known as much as they did about what was going on that week in Milwaukee. Maybe it's
it could be true too that June is not the best time of year for students, as Neil was saying, with finals and stuff. I understand it's a good time for broadcasters to have that conference, but it doesn't necessarily line up with everybody else's schedules as the best time of year.
And that's different for us. I mean, up in Canada, our university year ends in April. So students are either well into their summer research or, possibly doing other things. They're not busy with exams at that point. Maybe they're busy with summer classes. Maybe it's about just promoting it early and often, and then making sure we continually point them towards these types of conferences, whether it's this one or AMS they have conferences all the time, it seems.
Well, I got to bring this up with James, who has said this before. I don't know if there's still that amount of interest in broadcast meteorology and students as there was 10 years ago.
What people have to understand is that the next generation, as Troy says, they just don't have as much interest in traditional broadcasting. What we do is not relevant to them. It's really not. They would much prefer to build a new model, and I've said this before, I think they will. I think it's going to be better than ours. It will reach more people than ours and be more effective than ours. But they don't want to do what Troy and I have done for a long time. They would much rather generate their own video enterprise, if you will, whether it be on TikTok or YouTube or some other platform. So I think we all have to understand that that's just the way it is, and it will never be the same. We can't go back to 1985. It's 2022.
Well, James, you pointed out you've had positions vacant there at ABC 3340. And 25 years ago, you and I both know we had the news director's desk covered with tapes at the time. And nowadays you can go with vacancies in broadcasts that last for months.
Yeah. And I'll say this, Troy, and Brian Peters used to be on this show. Yep. Brian, for those that don't know, Brian was the WCM for a long time at Birmingham. And when he retired, we hired him here at the television station. And of course, he was on WeatherBrains too for a long time. But Brian retired from television. And Brian needed to spend some time with his wife. He needed to enjoy retirement. That position is still open after 1 year. How about that? That's how times have changed. Times have really changed like a meteor streaking through the night. And not only are they changing in the way that you've got traditional television people, looking for folks, the way people consume weather, it's different. Yep. I mean, who's going to wait until the 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock news to watch the weather on television? They're going to look at their phone and they're going to find their favorite social media person. And we just have to be cognizant of that. And we got to keep up with the changes. And all of this stuff is really important to follow.
That's so unfortunate. And I mean, I trust what you're saying. Obviously, you know that space far better than I do. I would question your comment about the newer age ways of being more effective. Like, I think that needs to be sort of evaluated more, because I think that there's a strong need and also an expressed desire to have people presenting the weather as you do and as Troy does. I think if you're still active, Troy, in that space, I'm not sure. But I don't know. I can say that we had the students giving the morning weather briefings at the conference, and all really capable, bright young students. One of them in particular was very nervous. You could tell he just had his arms crossed, and he was starting to give his morning briefing, and he said, no one's really listening because it was 8:15. People are still chatting with one another. They didn't have a strong command of the room. And I said, come on, guys, just speak up. You've got the room. No one's listening to us, they said. And I said, it's okay. People will start listening. That's kind of not even related, but I did enjoy that. I know it from the Canadian space. And very interestingly, I'm working on a project where we're talking with operational meteorologists with Environment Canada and broadcast meteorologists across the country about how they communicate risk. So we have our interview protocol and so on. But what I was doing yesterday was generating a list of potential participants from the broadcast space. And so I was trying to get a sense for who could participate. And as it turns out, we have major networks who don't even have weather people. They don't have chief meteorologists. We actually hire, they contract meteorologists from the weather network to fill in those pieces of their broadcast, or those segments of the broadcast. So I guess what you're saying is true. I mean, I see it in that way up here in Canada, where there's not as much money, I guess, directed within these news networks towards weather and broadcast meteorology. And you're saying that there's just not as much students, that you have vacancies in your stations.
The younger people don't have that great of an interest in doing what we've been doing, and we're doing Ron Burgundy newscasts from good evening. My home smells of rich mahogany. I have many leather-bound books. I mean, literally, that's what we're still doing here. And to them, it's a Saturday Night Live skit, and it has to evolve. It has to change. But I think the future is very bright. The problem, it's the wild, wild west during this change, where now you've got people flocking to the fear mongers that have no credentials, none, zero, no formal training in atmospheric science, that have gazillions of followers and views. And the traditional broadcasters, their audience is just tiny compared to what some of these people are bringing in. And we have to be where the people are, and we have to produce products and services that people want. And yeah, they're gonna seek us out when there are tornadoes flying, and when you've got a hurricane coming up the Gulf Coast. But if we're not on, a certain platform or wherever people are, then they're not going to use us. So I'm just saying that this is where we all have to work together. There's no need to fear change. I think change is good, but I'm just telling you, it's coming. I will tell you, it's coming.
This is a terrific topic. Let's circle back to it in a second. I have the sad news that we're going to be losing Robbie in a couple of minutes. And I believe that Neil might have, it would be very remiss if we didn't have Neil ask a question of him that he was wanting to ask before we lose him.
Oh.
Yeah.
We've gone down so many different rabbit holes in the chat over here. So I have to admit, I spent a lot of time on the internet Googling this bird, but you got to hear the story from Robbie, because the YouTube videos of people complaining that they thought people were out in their yard screaming for help is wild, and you should definitely check it out. But Robbie, tell us a little bit about this bird that spent the entire winter outside your window.
So I'm here down in South Florida. We have different wildlife from other parts of the country, and my house is on a lake. And usually about wintertime, you'll go to bed at night and get woken up to something outside. And I've determined it's a bird. It's called a limpkin. All I can say is if you look it up, look at the definition of what the bird does, it says, like Wikipedia will say that it's supposed to sound like someone wailing like a banshee. So it's a horrific sound to hear at night. It does not shut up all night. It must be like a male seeking a female or something like that. And it's quite annoying, and it's not something you want to hear at night. So, Yeah, I think Neil got a kick out of that story when I told it to him a year ago.
It was pretty awesome. I went and started looking up internet videos, and there's all these people who are like, I really want to kill this thing, but it's a protected species.
It kind of looks like an ibis, but it's brown. But yeah, it does sound like a wailing banshee.
Yeah, but with South Florida life, man, so while you might be winning right now on the temperatures, you are not winning on the wildlife that sounds like bloody murder out your window. So, with that said, Robbie, it's been a joy to have you. Is there anything else you want us to know about, your thoughts on the conference? And I mean, we're having a great conversation too about broadcasters. You interact with broadcasters too. Anything else you want to chime in on before we have to let you go?
No, I just say we need to get the word out about this joint conference in coming years. And I think the conversation we're having about students, it kind of brought to my mind, maybe the next go around we need to have a session where we bring in some young folks just to teach us about Instagram and TikTok and all the new social media platforms that we should be using to communicate. Because I don't think we are of the age to really know how to use it most effectively.
I certainly am not. No.
Robbie and Jen, one quick question for you, something that has been a topic of discussion here on the show in recent months. And I wonder if it came up in Milwaukee, came up during the conference. Anything from especially the broadcast Mets about too many warnings, overwarning? I just wonder if that came up at all during the conference.
I didn't hear that at all.
I didn't hear it either.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard that talk elsewhere, but I didn't hear it brought up once during this conference.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that means, but.
And we're thinking more, I'm thinking more of convective warnings, Robbie, instead of stuff from NHC and stuff like that, but tornado, severe thunderstorm warning, I'm concerned with it myself. And I know James has talked about it as well, and some of the experiences he's had in working with the folks there at National Weather Service office in Birmingham and what they've done, some things locally. So just thought I'd ask. I thought it'd be a good timely topic reference to what we discussed here on the show.
I mean, I will say, Kim was a part of the facets session. I think we had 6 or 7 talks in that session. Fascinating session. Great stuff, coming out of the work on that. I will say when I come away from that topic though, I think to myself, it's great. These are great tools for warnings, but we're never going to lose the human. When it comes out to putting out these warnings, we're just not. I mean, you can come up with algorithms to make things better and more tools for the forecaster, but it still requires a human to do the warning process. And I think that was one of my big takeaways from the conference.
Agree. Yeah, we'll not lose the humans, and warnings are, it seems like a very special thing that nothing Facets is making is going to replace, because there had been a talk about that. There'd been concern about that, but I think you're absolutely right, Robbie. And there was the talk Harold Brooks. It was at one of those, Micro Machine Man fitting a 45-minute talk into a 12-minute slot. I think a lot of people's brains fried, but he did sort of touch on, warning performance, how it's changing, and how there is some, desire that's been expressed within Weather Service to try to rein in false alarms, but that does have consequences. And so that was part of the conference. But yeah, otherwise, I don't think any other note. Well, any other questions we've got for Rob before we lose him? We can wish you well otherwise in your life down in Florida. And thank you so much for your time joining us tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to see you, Robbie. Great hair.
Season, Robbie.
Iconic hair. For those who listen to our show and don't get the benefit of seeing our show, you have to just Google Robbie Berg, because his hair is his signature, and we love him for it.
If we were doing this in person, I would tug on that hair to be sure it's not a toupee. I think it's a toupee. I mean, I just can't imagine anybody with hair that good looking. It's unbelievable.
Perfectly coiffed.
Yeah.
I promise it's real.
Yeah.
All right. So, see you, Robbie. I didn't mean to truncate our conversation on broadcasting, because I do think, I mean, you guys are sharing some really interesting perspectives on it. That is maybe an interesting piece of what is it that students are seeking when they come to this thing? And is broadcast and having that interaction with broadcasters what they might be interested in? I look at, makes me reflect on the more like weather warnings and communication conference side, which tends to be kind of academic. And I even was reflecting on our facet session too. It felt too academic. I really felt, I came away feeling like at this conference, even more than any other, maybe because we were with broadcasters so much more, and it just stuck out like a sore thumb when we weren't, and we were so different. I thought, gosh, I should be tailoring what I'm saying, not just to inform broadcasters to keep them up to date on research, but give them some tools in their toolkit. And maybe for students too, we could be giving them, you could come to get some practical career altering advice. Like maybe that would be a neat idea for us, to just really think differently about when we approach that conference, even as presenters, what is it that we're wanting to say? And how could, I think we could be more attractive to students and, a whole range of practitioners. Maybe it's an opportunity we can think about in the future.
Yeah, I would agree, Kim. And I think to Neil's point, there's likely an opportunity for outreach. I think the next meeting where the weather warnings and communication will be happening is in San Diego, possibly. Oh no, I'm sorry. They're looking at the East Coast. And so the point I want to make is maybe before that spins up, we use that opportunity to reach out to institutions with programs in whether it's atmospheric science or disaster or sociology, anthropology, take your pick of the social sciences, and see if we might be able to attract people and students specifically to submit an abstract or participate. I think it's a great space for students to sort of enter into the conference world. It's a very nice size conference for it to be a first conference.
True.
Yeah, and certainly your session was really rich in that academic content, but I think it's necessary. So I think it's a necessary opportunity for broadcasters, hopefully, to have taken it up and joined us and learned what's happening in the research space. So I think there were also some talks that were like purely broadcast and not entirely robust in terms of their the content, but I think also it was important in their own unique way for us to be listening in. What I see, what I hear, I don't recall exactly who was giving those presentations, but the methods that the person was discussing or explaining, having used to sort of generate their sample, surely this is not something we would consider to be sound in the academic world, but I would think that it was insightful. It was very interesting, and it's nice to see a broadcaster actually going out and asking those questions and being interested in knowing the responses so that they can that they can craft their expertise in more meaningful ways.
Jen, one of the things I absolutely adore about you is you are very forthright. Like you're extremely kind and you're sweet, and you just delivered something that I think most of us would find very difficult to say, but was important to say. You came out like, oh, you know what, the hybrid stuff, I don't think it worked. Here are my reasons why. And oh, you know what, broadcasters, maybe you shouldn't just try to do research, just like we shouldn't try to do your job. And it was in some sense, we were sitting there listening to some of these talks, feeling like, oh my, this is wow, But I thought that, like, just like you, I came away feeling also inspired by the kinds of questions they wanted to ask.
Yeah,
and it was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's exciting that people are wanting to ask those questions of their audience. And I'm grouping all of these people and making broad sweeping generalizations, and I shouldn't do that. But for the one person was actually making an effort to learn the needs of their the population that they serve. And this is precisely what we try to do, or at least I try to do in my research. I'm not interested in doing research for research's sake. I want to create research findings that then can be applied and operationalized or somehow help communities, whether it's to tornadoes or floods or what have you. So
let me go back to the hybrid thing for a second, because one of the I guess the benefits that I've seen are that the students can attend more workshops without having to pay expensive travel costs, which are going up astronomically. But the downside, I think, is that, and maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but I think there's other people that were students at one point, and when we were doing a lot of these in-person meetings like AMS and AGU as students, the biggest beneficial thing to me were the sidebar conversations in the hallways, at the coffee shops, meeting other students, meeting other PIs and faculty members, and having these conversations that you can't have in a virtual setting. And I worry that if a lot of the students see the trend towards just doing virtual for the convenience and cost savings sake, they're going to miss this ability to make these personal connections. And I don't know a way to overcome that. Admittedly, I'm not on all like the cool hip software, so maybe there is
an idea. I think that it's incumbent upon us as principal investigators in projects to dedicate money for students to travel and be able to present at these conferences. These conferences are exceptionally rich experiences for students to network, to sort of learn all of the exciting research that's happening, to fill their minds. They leave these conferences swirling with ideas. I mean, you can't possibly achieve all of the ideas that you have once you leave a conference, but I see that as being a key way. I mean, we need to enable students to participate. We need to create that space in our budgets when we're planning and applying for money. I mean, there's probably other ways too, but I see that as being a really easy way.
That's great. That's part of how our students were able to make it up, like Joseph,
Right?
who got to have jazz music while he presented. He's such a professional. It's almost like he's not even a student, but there are great opportunities for us to be intentional about that, Jen. I absolutely agree. It is incumbent upon us to try to be inclusive, and that can really help. And for maybe something we can think about too is looking, you mentioned bringing in interdisciplinary programs, the question of how do we bring in people who are outside meteorology. We can be thinking about also looking for projects, where there are, questions being explored that we think are interesting. And if they have students that are part of those, and we can be, reaching out at those more granular levels too, go through just simply perusing the NSF solicitations for whatever it is that, the sort of hazards, disasters programs tend to be putting out at any given time. That can get you some really good ideas and good fodder. So maybe stuff for us to think about in the future. Is that great? Recruiting at those levels is a really neat way for us to grow this conference.
And I think the hybrid is not altogether, it's not 100% terrible, but I think that that to Neil's point, there's a different kind of connection that's being fostered. I see it in my classes, especially after, if we go back into in-person and then have some hybrid at a later date, I just think the students that I'm teaching at this point have never met each other. They've never actually been in the same room with one another. So when I'm trying to foster connections for group work, it's just not happening. I'm having to assign teams or people to teams. And so I think if we transfer that to a conference, if students and people are only able to engage virtually, they're just really missing out on who that person is. So, I mean, we see it all the time. Was-is, the one of the best things about was-is, that Weather and Society Integrated Studies, was being together and building relationships with the other registrants, the other people. You spent, I mean, obviously it's different. It was 5-6 days of togetherness, but I still know many of those people. I still talk to them. I can reach out to them. Kim, you're one of them. I mean, so I don't think we can underestimate how important that in-person kind of connection is.
Absolutely agree. So I know, Rick, one of the great sessions I want to be sure that we chat about that happened at the conference too was something you got the chance to co-chair, and it featured some great speakers from NOAA. So we had, you know, the broadcasters represented, we had social science researchers. We also did have some important perspectives brought to bear from operations, especially the National Centers of Environmental Prediction. And I didn't envy you, honestly, moderating that. It was a lot, but would love to hear from you about that session and what kinds of things were discussed too from the operations side.
It was a real honor to be able to be the moderator or chair of that session. I remember getting the email from Jen and Robbie several weeks before, and I'm always honored to be a session chair for anything. So if I'm going to be there and I can do it, I'll say yes. And I don't think it really hit me what the session was until maybe on the plane going there, or especially the night before. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a pretty big deal. You know, you got Dr. Rick Spinrad, and you got all these high ups from all the OPCs and NHCs and all these directors. And so yeah, that I usually just wing in at ad lib, but if you see me taking notes and writing introductions, you know that I'm nervous about it. But I think it went really well. I got to introduce Dr. Rick Spinrad, and I think, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Robbie I was talking to, that he thought this was really important to highlight the national centers. Now, the national centers get a lot of attention, the National Hurricane Center and the Storm Prediction Center, but I think a lot of people don't really understand exactly all the things that go on, and places like the Ocean Prediction Center, you don't hear a lot about climate prediction. So anyway, this gave each center an opportunity to do a presentation on different aspects of their organization. And yeah, I think Rick Spinrad started it off very well with his keynote that was much shorter than I was planning on it being, because there was some miscommunication anyway, we could talk more about that. It went well. He talked as long as he thought he was supposed to talk. That's all that mattered. So, and it was a very good talk, and it was an honor to have him there. We had the WCM conference last week, and he was there virtually, so he couldn't be there in person. So we were really lucky to get him to come to Milwaukee and join us there. Then, of course, Greg Carbon, and Greg Carbon can read the phone book, and it would be interesting. But he gave a really good presentation on the Weather Prediction Center and some of the challenges there and some of the things that they're doing. And then it was very cool to have Jamie Rome, who just in the last week had become the acting director of the National Hurricane Center. And Jamie doesn't pull any punches either. I mean, he was pretty direct in some of his comments, and very, very, very good presentation. And the National Water Center was represented, the Ocean Prediction Center, Climate Prediction Center. Forgive me if I don't remember a lot of the details of those, but it was just great to have all of those centers represented in a room. I don't remember a conference I've been to where that's been done, where you just had the national centers under NOAA to just talk about their emissions. And there's so much overlap between SPC and NHC and CPC and everybody. And the Ocean Prediction Center has a much bigger role in the weather forecasting business than you might think. So anyway, it was just an honor to chair the session, and I'm glad I didn't screw anything up too badly. And so yeah.
No, you did it
went well.
You did a wonderful job, Rick. I think the only thing that could have made that session more powerful is to have had different people in the audience, like to have emergency managers or other kinds of practitioners who don't as far as my experience has shown me, don't have as much knowledge of what these national centers are doing and the role that they play in those emergency managers, as an example, everyday decisions. So I think, which speaks to possibly, maybe we could create more integration. Maybe that's a different conference altogether, but to have greater diversity in terms of the audience and registrants.
Something that we have thought about in the past for the AMS annual meeting that touches on this, you brought up the issue of bringing in people from outside the field and how challenging that is when they're not a meteorologist. But for example, when we wanted to grow what was the Policy Symposium, now Societal Application Symposium, we knew we needed voices like yours, Jen. We needed more people who come from fields outside of meteorology and add to the things that are said there. You just really need that fresh perspective. And we worked to bring some people in. We've had some success by just being place-based. We're opportunistic. And it's the years that Randy Pepler and I were the lead co-chairs for that conference, part of it was motivated because we're geographers, but part of it was actually Heather Lazarus at NCAR. Mm-hmm. She has been part of, another anthropologist, she's been part of a big campaign that NCAR runs, Raising Local Voices. And so she was very intentional, with us in sharing her idea and heart for go into the places where you're going to hold the meeting and actually reach out to the community. And you have people there locally who both need our science and aren't necessarily connected, like you're saying, but also have so much to share that you've never heard. And that reduces cost burden quite a bit. And if you can work with AMS also to waive, like they can sometimes waive a one-day registration fee. And if someone doesn't have to travel, then they can just come, then that's a wonderful opportunity. And we've had some incredible success with that. And maybe with warning comms, wherever we go next, it could be amazing. If it's the East Coast, to speak to your point about emergency managers, we just are completing now a study of emergency managers across the US. We're trying to get some baselines on what their backgrounds are, the degree to which they have, how are they connected institutionally to the various organizations of meteorology, especially for severe weather. And we see huge geographic differences where the central and southern US are very well connected to the Storm Prediction Center, and the East Coast emergency management infrastructure is just much, much less. So, hey, that could be an amazing opportunity. Bring in some local people, have just some 101s. There could be some extraordinary opportunity building on your idea. I think that's fantastic. And there could be some great opportunities there.
Yeah, I think if I were to do this again, I would probably make it more of a short course before the beginning of the conference, so that there is no overlap, no competition with other kinds of events happening, but then to really be able to dedicate enough time for us to dig in and make some meaningful headway.
Yeah, the idea of being able to integrate local experts on non-weather topics is huge. I mean, we've actually invited local psychologists and clinical psychologists to come and join panels with us when we've done these talks on mental health and critical incident stress at several AMS annual meetings over recent years. And just having a local expert there is very cool. If you can build it into your budget to get that one-day registration fee waived, which is not cheap, even a one-day registration at the AMS annual meeting is big bucks. But
it's
anyway,
very prohibitive the way that it's structured now.
So, but fortunately, in the planning process, I know the Societal Impact Symposium, which I'm a co-chair of, we try to build that in so that AMS can waive that or pay it or whatever they call it. But so it really does make a difference. And I say all the time, the more non-weather people, the more non-meteorologists we can have at any of these conferences, the better. One of the best talks I have, and the one that choked me up the most, was the mayor of Mayfield, Kentucky, who spoke at the Central Iowa NWA meeting. She needs to be at every weather conference for the next year because her message, her down to earth, use of weather information. And it just, everything that we're talking about comes together in a person like that with an event like that. So anyway, I can't encourage highly enough any way that we can get more non-us in these conferences, the better.
Let me echo that, Rick. I speak in a lot of these things, and I was speaking at a conference, and James Spann, bag of hot air, blah blah blah. This guy talks too much. But I talked about an EF5 that came through Birmingham in 1998. Went through the meteorology, went through some SKUTs, the setup, and then I talked about the 34 people that died, and I showed a picture of one of those that was Nathan Seals, and I said, you know what? I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes, and I want you to meet Nathan's dad, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew came out in a wheelchair. The whole family was lofted, and by a miracle, he survived. Let me tell you what, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, everybody stopped. And I have never seen a weather conference so focused on what any one individual had to say. And what he had to say was important, I think, that everybody needed to hear. And I totally agree that we need more of that. But anyway, so for the three of you that were there, I'm your lowly practitioner guy that needs help. So what were the three biggest takeaways that we can use in the future going forward? So for all three of you, the three biggest takeaways, go, somebody take the lead, take the ball and run with it. And don't all talk at once. I knew this would happen. Everybody goes radio silent.
I need to think here.
Or just give me maybe one, maybe the big takeaway for you. And it's going to be different for everybody. And then, a lot of people listen to this that are in my boat. We are the last link to the public, and we are struggling to try and be better communicators and to effectively message risk and danger during high impact weather events. So how can we be better? Yeah, I know you guys learned a lot up there. So share some of your wisdom, just one big takeaway.
The first thing that jumps out for me is, and we've talked about it throughout the show tonight, is just how integrated both these groups are. How it would not make sense to not have conferences together for these two groups, especially because obviously the broadcasters are all about communication. The practitioners and the researchers and all of us need to learn a lot more about how the broadcasting business works. So it's not anything earth shattering or groundbreaking or anything, but we have to work together. I mean, it just makes so much sense. You can't segregate the broadcasters over here, although they are a very different work conference than our conference. This conference is my biennial reminder of how introverted I truly am compared to the broadcast meteorologists. You can hear them from the top floor of the hotel. Anyway, I love them. Love them. It's an energy. I think somebody mentioned the energy.
Show title.
They're unmistakable. But we can't stay separate. We have to all work together. Researchers, broadcasters, practitioners, students, all of us, because this is a hard job, what we're trying to do. And we need each other for sure.
Em, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think about my takeaways are going to be a little bit from the perspective of a researcher, but along the same vein as what you were talking about, Rick. I was just fascinated to really hear from the broadcasters, and it made me think about how I don't know that there's a really great pipeline to bring up the research needs of broadcasters into, our community, the social and behavioral science research community that is doing that research on communication in, applied settings that broadcasters would be really interested in. And, we sort of have a tendency to frame the questions, we frame them, and then hope that would really make manifest for broadcasters what they need. I have relationships with broadcasters where some of my ideas do bubble up from there, but I'm always just impressed listening to these conferences where if a broadcaster submits something to a conference like this, it's something that they're really passionate about. And, James, you were the same kind of fervent passion that you bring to this show with all of the topics that you bring up here. Other broadcasters feel, very passionate about other topics that maybe resonate with their their audiences, the places that they live. There's such a diversity out there of issues that broadcasters are facing in these different places. And I really think that could be an amazing thing for us to tap into better. So that's one piece. And the other piece for me is just how refreshing it was to be in person. I think, we were talking about earlier that science has kind of been on pause for 2 years. And Troy, I think that was the point you made. And I completely agree with you. The way I've put it with my colleagues locally is, we've sort of been running on the fumes of our previous energy and the ways that the projects we'd planned and all the things that we did when we were together leading up to 2020. And we've been working through that stuff while we've been working remote for the last 2 years. But we're kind of coming to the end of those fumes, and you can feel the distance growing. We even in the research community, we need to be together to do the work that we do, and we need to see each other. I think that we're all human in this enterprise, and just being around each other, it was just as big of a takeaway for me to realize that and to feel that and to feel part of myself coming back. I mean, I really physically felt part of my brain coming back into my body, being in that setting with everyone. I just feel like I can't be the only one who felt that way and who needs that. Even introverts. I know that I'm in this panel we've talked about in the past. I'm one of the extroverts on this panel, maybe the only one. Everyone else is sort of the I on the Myers-Briggs scale. But I think that is an important part of science that needs to not get overlooked. Even as we explore, hybrid or virtual work could offer all these doors to different populations, I just don't think it compares. So really appreciate that discussion that some of you lent earlier. Just completely agree.
So Kim, I'm a proud ESFJ. So I think that I am standing with you as an extrovert tonight. I think my biggest takeaway from this conference and generally from my work is to the importance of recognizing the diverse needs of the publics we serve. And it shows up in different ways based on who you are. Broadcasters are seeing the diverse needs based on the comments that they're receiving after, whether it's cutting into their programming or just some of the feedback that they get after a broadcast. We see it on the research side as these are things we study. We kind of understand that there are diverse needs that we need to be addressing. One of the sessions I thought was, two sessions were really extremely interesting in this regard. Joseph Trujillo Falcon, I'm sorry if I'm saying his name incorrectly, he rose to a higher level of consciousness, the challenges for language speaking individuals during extreme weather, and just that there is a major gap in terms of how the needs of this group, of this community, are being met and how they're not being met. And thankfully, I think Joseph is working with the agency to sort of enhance weather information to be distributed in Spanish. Now, that's an academic kind of example. On the broadcast side, Vivian Rennie, I was so impressed by Vivian Rennie's presentation. She gave a presentation all about sign language for broadcast meteorologists and the importance for ensuring that equity-deserving groups have access to life-saving information during extreme weather situations. So I think it's about always trying to recognize and continue to promote that publics that we serve have very diverse needs. And when we're generating tools and we're building science, that we really have to meet people where they are. That the science, the tool is only as useful as as long as the people can use it. So that would be my biggest takeaway.
Now, I will totally agree. And I've shared this on here before. Our intern program has started back up again, which is great. He's going to a conference. We have interns again for the first time since, I guess, 2019. And the first place I take these brilliant students, I take them to a Walmart in a working class part of the city to see if they can actually interact and understand the different people groups that they're going to serve. Because a lot of them have not been exposed to all these different people groups. I certainly was not when I was young, when I was that age. These are people that don't look like them. They don't have the same education they do. They don't vote like them. They don't have the same culture or worldview, but yet you have to serve everybody. Yeah. And you need to see them, look them in the eyes. There's nothing that beats that. And some of these kids are scared to death. I've got one this year. I thought he was going to melt down before we got to the Walmart, but he did fine. But I engaged them in conversation with people that they're different. And a lot of these are underserved people groups. Quite frankly, I've done a horrible job of trying to reach over the last umpteen years. And it helps me as well. And so I love that concept, is that we have to understand our audience, not just, the people that look like us, but everybody. And we have done a horrible job here of reaching those that speak Spanish. We've done a horrible job here of those that are hearing impaired. There's so many people groups that we need to work on. So that's great takeaways here. But I'm looking at the clock here, and we do have to take a break here. So Jen, I know you have to go.
I think I'm going to go. Yeah, I think. Well, I should go. I should go see my family.
I know. I'm saying you're welcome to stay, but you've been here way past.
I wish I could. Your voice is so magical right now with the tools that you have. It's just really nice to listen to you.
Oh no, no. I'm just some old guy rambling on here. But listen, it was great having you on the show tonight. Thank you for the debriefing. Nice it was good for everybody, and we thank you so much for your time, and it was just great having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Of course, no, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for having me and for listening. And it's very nice to see you again, Rick and Kim. Nice to meet you, Neil, James, and Troy. I interviewed you many years ago for a project when I was working with Dr. Eve Grumfest for social science and meteorology. And you provided your broadcast meteorologist expert perspective for the project. So thank you 10 years later, 12 years later.
Hey, no problem, Jen. It's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay.
Hi, Jen.
Great, thanks. We're not done here. We're going to take a break. We're going to hear from Tony Rice, and then we'll get This Week in Tornado History from Jen. We will come back with the email inbox, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Yesterday was aphelion day, Earth's furthest point from the sun, and it's not quite so circular orbit. So why is it so hot when we're at our furthest from the sun? Well, first you're thinking like a northern hemispherian, which is actually understandable because there's a lot more land and therefore a lot more people up here in the northern hemisphere. More on that in a bit. Temperatures are actually far less influenced by the proximity to the sun than the angle it's shining on us. During these summer months, Earth is tilted upwards towards the sun. That exposes North America and all those other continents north of the equator to more direct, more concentrated sunlight across longer days. While down south of the equator, the sunlight's more spread out. This process switches, of course, as the year moves on and we move into winter and down south moves into summer. Since southern hemisphere summers coincide with perihelion, when the Earth is at its closest to the sun, you think it might be just a little bit warmer there overall during summer months. But actually it's not. The southern hemisphere is about 3.5 degrees cooler over the year because there is much more ocean than land south of the equator. An about 80-20 water-land ratio down south versus 60-40 up here in the north. And water requires significantly more energy to increase its temperature. Summer is also about 4 days longer in the northern hemisphere, and that actually is because of the increased distance to the sun. Right now, we're moving about 1,000 meters per second, or more than 2,200 miles per hour slower than we will in January. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hookie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, July 6, 2001. As a weak cold front moves south into an afternoon sea breeze boundary, slow-moving thunderstorms developed along the South Carolina coast in Horry County. A weak tornado formed near the Myrtle Beach Pavilion at 9th Avenue North and moved just offshore, becoming a waterspout. It slightly damaged the 2nd Avenue North Pier and then moved back onto the beach. The tornado caused extensive damage to nearby hotels and to vehicles. It also overturned buses. The rating given was F2. The tornado moved off the beach again, and so now we have a water spout that continues south about 100 yards from the shore until it came on land again between 28th Avenue South and Spring-Made Pier. A 66-knot gust was reported at the Spring-Made Pier anemometer. The Seagate RV Park was hit. 10 RVs were destroyed, 40 more were damaged. The tornado then crossed U.S. Highway Business 17 onto Myrtle Beach International Airport, doing minor damage to trees and structures. There were 39 injuries and no fatalities. Read about this event at tornadotalk.com.
Oh, hit the button a little early here. I was so excited to jump into the email inbox to see if anything is in there.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
I have one lonely email that came in this evening from Nate Larson. Nate, thanks so much for giving us picks of the week idea, because you know that Troy usually is going to get the foghorn. So I really appreciate you trying to save him. But he did give us a pick of the week if we were interested. It came an episode from CNN's podcast called Margins of Error, which has to do with weather forecasting. And he said he listened to it over the weekend, thought it was quite interesting. So we have that link if anybody needs it, and we can throw that out there as well if we need to. Other than that, that's the only email we have. But folks, we get your stuff, and we appreciate you communicating with us, letting us know how you feel about the show, sending us your pick of the week ideas, show ideas as well. Email at weatherbrains.com. And also don't forget our newsletter. We're taking a little break this week, but we will be back at it next week with a newsletter coming in every Thursday morning. So that's about it for me.
Yep. This is summer. It's a time where everybody's schedule is somewhat disrupted, and traditionally in the podcasting world, and understand we've been doing this since 2006. So we've been doing this a long time. You can kind of see the numbers go down every year in the summer. Then they really come back up hard in late August and September as everybody gets back into the work routine and the vacations are over and school is back in session. So we'll take a break from the newsletter, but we will be up and running at full speed here come the time everybody's back. And again, on a logistical note, I will try and take one more week off in August. So we'll do a couple of shows in advance of that. And then after that, we'll be regulars on Monday night, right on through Christmas. And again, for those that are watching live, this is a Tuesday night special this week. And if you're an audio listener, you're getting it a day late. But again, we did that because of the 4th of July holiday this week. So let's do picks of the week. We're going to go around the horn and everybody share something that's cool, exciting, thrilling, that's related to weather. And Troy, I'm going to start with you because if nothing else, you've got an email pick that came in.
Yeah, I just want to, something we haven't plugged lately, and I think it's time that we do that. Maybe I'm more desperate than anything else at this point. But folks, remember the Coco Ross organization, our grassroots effort across the United States that lets everyone be involved in helping to report weather information, and especially in those areas where maybe we don't have as many observers. And 2.5 weeks ago, on one of the weeks when I was gone, I spent a better part of a week actually in Northeast Mississippi, and had been really trying to get more Coco Ross observers up there. And so I loaded up on rain gauges that I bought, took them up around Corinth, up in Alcorn County, which is my old stomping ground from many years back. And we got some of these Coco Ross gauges installed. The only real observation point we have in Alcorn County and up in the Corinth area is the airport. It's an AWOS with no additive data. It's not one of the best AWOSs in the world. We lost in the middle of COVID, we lost over 100-year climate record with a co-op, a National Weather Service co-op. That station went silent and it has not been replaced. And have the honor to work with Sam. Sam is actually one of the observation program leads there in Memphis at the Weather Service, and she works as a regional coordinator there in Northeast Mississippi. So basically, I got out there and stomped and looked around, and we got 3 or 4 gauges installed in and around the Corinth area, and they're reporting I gave you the cocoros.org website for everyone to look at, no matter where you are in the United States. If you feel good about this, we don't write, Cocoros does not write. I was actually Texas State coordinator for a while, so I say we don't. But there are no checks written for anyone. In fact, we make you buy a certain type of rain gauge. But I'm going to tell you the rewards are really there for helping people like Rick Smith and Norman to be able to get some of those reports from the outlying areas you ordinarily don't hear from. Well, we've done that in Northeast Mississippi now. At least we've added 3 or 4 more gauges than we didn't have. And I appreciate Sam's help from the National Weather Service there in Memphis. And we're not through yet. I want to thank Donna and Jason and Rob and Ricky there in Alcorn County, some of our new observers, and even talk to our friend James, Johnny Parker down in Smithville, and going to get him a gauge. Texted and talked to him yesterday. So we're looking to really grow the footprint of Cocoros in Northeast Mississippi. And that's something I dedicated a week of my life for a couple of weeks back. And so just wanted to give Cocoros a big plug around the United States. It's a great effort and a lot of good people really doing a lot of good stuff. And also have to mention the fine people at Colorado State that make this happen. Grown from just a grassroots effort, folks.
It can be done, and it is so useful. I totally agree. It's a great pick, Troy. Excellent. All right, let's go over to Rick Smith. Rick, what's your pick of the week?
And thank you, Troy, for doing that. I think a lot of people don't understand how little information we get in the Weather Service and in the broadcast industry too. People think we know everything, and just because we have radar or satellite or whatever. No, we need those plastic rain gauges out in people's backyards to know how much it rains. And it rains a different amount at your house than it does across the street. And the only way for us to know that is that grassroots effort like Troy talked about. That's not my pick of the week, but I want to pile onto that and say, amen. Thank you for doing that, Troy. My pick of the week, we've mentioned his name several times. His ears probably burning. Joseph Trujillo Falcone, who did an amazing presentation at the conference we just talked about, and who continues to do just outstanding work in the area of communicating weather information in Spanish. And he's done a lot of work to help to produce graphics that the SPC is using, Spanish language graphics. I've learned so much. It's so much more complicated than getting a Spanish-English dictionary and just doing a word-for-word translation. It doesn't work like that. So he's doing amazing work. And my pick of the week is a Forbes article about some of his work and highlighting some of the things he's done. And this is a challenging thing. I listened to Joseph's talk there in Milwaukee, and it's cool, and I'm energized by listening to it. But it's also overwhelming to think, oh my gosh, we're tackling this, but we're just at the tip of the iceberg. So anyway, that's my pick.
You know, something
Excellent.
else, Rick, I want to mention real quick about Joseph. He was also involved in, for the folks that were at the broadcast meeting, Mike, who is our AMS chair for professional affairs, I think announced at that meeting the fact that we are now taking the CBM exam, the first, by the way, in the AMS and the professional. We're actually, through help of many people, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but we're actually doing the CBM exam and readying it now so that it can be taken in Spanish. And so this is something, and Joseph's one of the people that helped us with so many other AMS members that helped us with that, and very proud, even though I've done very little to help that effort, being in charge of the CBM exam review committee, ultimately it kind of comes back here. But I want to thank everyone that's made that happen, because we are the first in professional affairs to do that in the AMS.
All right, Neil, what's your pick of the week? Go.
So I basically spent the last week to 2 weeks just reading journal articles and writing code, and got so burnt out, I went on the internet and just Googled ridiculously dumb meteorology stuff and came up with this YouTube video called A Meteorologist's Worst Mistake. And it's a funny cartoon about TV meteorologists that intentionally put themselves in severe weather events. It's pretty entertaining, although I guess if this happened to you, you might not think it's so funny.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see this. So again, we'll put it up on weatherbrains.com. And Neil, I picked a little piece about your 2 new Cray supercomputers.
I'm proud of that purchase. That's some big
Cactus
money.
and cactus and dogwood. Now, is dogwood located in your basement there, Neil?
No, it's a much more sophisticated data center than the one I'm managing.
You again, we need to give you some time to talk about these things sometimes. I'm fascinated by the power of these and what it takes to keep them online. And goodness, for I've got a little UPS here, and I think about, what I do for these little small computers here in the office. I cannot imagine managing these things. It's got to be a chore. But anyway, they are online and they are up and running. So again, a little piece that describes more about the new Cray supercomputers that are online. All right, so let's go to Jen. Jen, what's your pick of the week? Go.
So my pick of the week is 2 years ago this week. It was the Dalton Ashby tornado, the EF4, most photogenic tornado of the year. Sadly, there was one fatality. It was a 30-year-old man that died in his machine shop. But I had the write-up for the National Weather Service Grand Forks, but it was probably the most impressive tornado that year. And so they did a really great job at mapping it out and give us some details on that and some of the photos that came in from some of the chasers as well.
Awesome. And let's go to Kim. Kim, what's your pick of the week this week?
Sure. I'll really quickly note, you guys were, before I do my pick, you guys were talking about Joseph, and he's technically a student in my team. He's like my student, quote unquote, but he is absolutely going to be one of these people who transforms our field. He already is, and he doesn't need to be anyone's student. One of the things that I think is so important to recognize about the way that he's able to make the contributions he makes is that, the only thing we have been very intentional about doing is taking care of Joseph. And part of that is because he's a native Spanish speaker. He's an immigrant to our country. And it's really, really, like, his example is one where we need to recognize that if we want to meet the needs of different vulnerable populations, we absolutely have to include them in our field, in our research. Joseph, at the Weather Warnings Conference, he presented on the case study that my team did of the December 10th, 2010 tornado, December 10th, 2021 tornado outbreak in the Mid-South. And we broke up into sub-teams. He had a team that was, looking at Spanish-speaking populations and immigrant populations. And if he had not been who he was, he, A, wouldn't have gotten the interviews he got, and B, would not have gotten the richness of information that he got. And the reason he was able to get both of those things was because he had the trust and relationship with those communities, and he was able to leverage that. That's something that we absolutely have to acknowledge. And I think those of us who work in the social sciences are probably just really close to it. But I think for anyone who's a practitioner, broadcasters, weather service, you want to serve your publics better and understand what they need from you and where gaps might be. Include people who are those populations and talk with them and have them help you. There's no other way to do it with nearly the quality that you're going to get when you try another way. So sorry, just had to put a plug in for what it is that makes, one of the things of many that make Joseph so wonderful. But my transition to my pick of the week, it is an advertisement. We've been talking about the conference that just happened on weather warnings communication. It's actually an advertisement for another conference. If all of the conference talk today left you energized, kind of wanting to participate in a conference, maybe not virtually, but I guess that's, we can't all have everything we want. This one's a virtual conference. It's all virtual, but it's the Natural Hazards Workshop. And several months ago, you guys might recall, if you're a loyal listener, we had Dr. Lori Peak, who is the director of the Natural Hazards Center, on our show. She is the lead organizer for this workshop. And it's just an incredible event every year. Even virtual, there are a lot of great talks, and it brings in the practitioner focus and some great social science all around, disasters and managing them. Big picture. Meteorology plays a really important part in it. And it's kind of nice to see ourselves. I love that conference because it's not just all weather. We kind of see where weather fits into the bigger picture of being resilient on our planet. So wonderful workshop. It's virtual. The options for joining are still open. If you'd like to register, highly recommended.
Excellent. All of these picks will be up on weatherbrains.com. Where's Bill Murray? Anybody know? It was 50-cent beer night at Hooters. Do we have any idea? I mean, but Bill is typically here. I'll say this about Bill. He is loyal. I mean, he travels a lot, but he somehow finds a way to get on the show. So everybody deserves a week off. But anyway, we do need to wrap this up. And again, we're on Tuesday night this week, but next week we'll be back on our Monday night schedule. We're typically here Monday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. And a lot of people watch it over at live.bigbrainsmedia.com. Some watch it on the new YouTube channel for Weather Brains. But we know that most of you don't watch, you listen. We're cognizant of that. So we thank you for that. If you want to get in touch with us, we love your emails. This is a great time to do it in the summer, by the way. The email address, it's email@weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire Weather Brains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Thanks, everybody. That was a fun show. It was good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for chiming in. That was, I love when we all are like talking. I don't even have to say anything. Everyone's just arguing amongst themselves.